These are the interviews from Chat City on Preston FM. Don't forget, our show is live weekdays from 10 till noon. Tune in and become part of our family.
And you're with Chat City on a Wednesday morning, and we had Gail Newsham in not long ago talking about In a League of Their Own, the Dick Kerr ladies football team from 1917 to 1965. And staying with the theme of history in Preston, it's nice now to welcome into the studio Vicci McCann, and Vicci's from Lancashire Archives. So very good morning, Vicci.
Good morning.
Nice to meet you again. And I mean, lots of things happening throughout the year. I mean, we were just talking about World War One, and I know there's going to be lots of things happening throughout the city. I mean, some of the things already taking place, but as the months go on, a lot more things happening. And I think something's going to be happening with Lancashire Archives. Is that right?
There certainly is. We've been approached by the organisers of the Preston Arts Festival for 2014 to run a creative writing project using archives relating to the First World War. And the chap who's organising it took part in a creative writing project we did back in 2009 called Milk and Martha Proctor, and it's going to be very much in the same vein. People will come and have a look at the archives and then use them as inspiration to do a piece of writing. But this time we're also hoping to include visual artists, so people who might find inspiration to sort of create a piece of artwork other than written work.
Right, and hopefully that's going to be taking place through May.
Yeah, we're still waiting for the date to be confirmed. We're hoping the 10th of May, but we will, if you look out for details, they will be on our website, and there will be details hopefully in the press of when that will take place. But you can also phone Lancashire Archives if you're interested.
And what about, how much information, etc., is there within the archives about World War One? Is there quite a substantial amount?
There is, yes. It tends to be very ad hoc in a way because it comes from personal collections mostly, although we do have some appeals tribunal records and other sort of official records, but on the whole you get lots of diaries and letters. Some of the sort of slightly unusual things we've been looking at, and we're hoping to run another creative writing project next year, but that's dependent on funding from Grants for the Arts. But that would be using coroner's records for Morecambe
right.
during the First World War period, and there are a lot of sort of related stories, but sort of related to the home front instead of actually what was going on in France. So we have all sorts of things, as I say, letters, diaries, St Mary's Hospital in Worley, we have the patient's list and odd things like that. So, but we do have what we call a hand list with details of what we have got. So if anybody's interested, please get in touch. And
I take it also if anybody has anything that they could offer to the archives to do
Absolutely,
with World
yeah.
War. I would imagine. Is that how it usually comes about? Will people get in touch and they maybe have found something in the attic, or there's something that they've got that they didn't realise the importance of when it comes to Preston and history? Yeah,
I mean, quite often people have things, historic records, say family records, and they just don't realise that there's anywhere, to deposit them. Sadly, with a lot of those sorts of things as well, that when people die, they just get cleared out of the house and perhaps, get lost forever. But certainly if people have historic records and, they want to deposit them with us or talk to us about it, then, they're more than welcome to come along.
Right. And also, I know we've mentioned this before, that you have regular speakers who come along and that it's open to the public, for the public to come along. And I think, is the next one coming up quite soon?
It is, yes. It's the 13th of May. And this is our one of our own people, Mark Wormsley, who's our conservation manager. And he is also a visual artist in his own right, but he works with decorative papers, and he also he's interested in paste papers and marbling, and he does a lot of his artwork with paste, but the recipes he found actually in the archives to create the paste to do his pieces of artwork. So he'll be talking about that and what inspires him, but also just linking to the First World War again, in September we will have a whole month of Tuesday evening talks related to the First World War, including the Latham Remount Depot and various other things. So look out for those.
And that's that's the one that you've just mentioned, the Leyland.
The Latham. Remount Depot. That was sort of the story of Warhorse, really. That's where they took the horses in for shipping out to France. Right.
And was there a connection locally also then with the horses that they transported here locally?
Yes, yeah. I mean, I think that was probably the main one for Lancashire, and it was sort of in Latham, but I believe there was another one in Lancaster as well, and there were people working on it at the moment, researching the whole history of this aspect of the First World War.
Right. So it's a fascinating thing, really. I mean, there are people who kind of are dedicated researchers, are they, who put the information together when something like that is being celebrated, as you say, in September.
Yes, yeah. We get all sorts of people researching all sorts of things. It's quite hard to predict what people might find useful or interesting when they come in, and over the years you get people coming in and sort of looking at fascinating things. When I worked at Barclays Group Archives down in Manchester very early on in my career, and there was a group called the Cheque Collectors Society, and they were genuinely just interested in researching the history of cheques.
Is that right? Do you mean the cheques that we that are often under threat these days?
Yes, yeah, So they would sort of take images of different, I suppose, a bit like train spotters in a way. They would collect details from different cheques at different periods.
It is fascinating, isn't it? The things that people do collect, or the hobbies that they have. And again, at the archives, I suppose, depending on what people do collect or their interests are, that the central focus is the archives here in Lancashire.
Yes, yeah. And, we're always, you were saying about the First World War records, we're always getting new things in, and we're always surprised with what's will still come in, and so much of what we do is raising awareness, not just for people to use the archives, but to find out if there's more out there.
And is there a date that you go by? I mean, if somebody has something that they think is of interest, or it could be of historical interest, I mean, is there a kind of cut-off date that you go up to before you put something into the archives?
No, we take records in, modern records in all the time. We have a relationship with our records management service, and there are certain records that we have to keep by law, and there are other records which we determined, as being kept, to be kept for permanent preservation. So we get things. So coroner's records, for example, we get they're kept for 15 years at records management, and then they come over to us to be sampled and kept.
And the records that we've got to keep by law, I take it are they the marriage, birth, death records, etc.?
That's different in a way, because it's actually the Church of England's own legislation that says that they have to deposit their records of baptisms, marriages and burials with us.
Is that right?
Yes,
I didn't realise that.
There isn't any sort of one single piece of legislation that says that archives have to be kept, and this is something, as a profession, as a body, we are sort of working on together collectively across the country.
You mean that there should be? Yes, there should be some kind of legislation
sort of
that there
legislation, is? Yeah. At the moment, it's quite. There's a local government act and there's public record acts and things like that ensure that certain records are preserved. But in terms of the private things, the things that people bring in, it's only because we're there that they can do that, really.
Right. And you feel that if there was some form of legislation that would be, in a way, safeguarding future historical records by then the being a requirement that they were kept? Yeah,
that there is some commitment to preserving our written heritage for future generations of all kinds, really.
Right. So at the moment across the country, as you say, that is being looked at, and hopefully one day that legislation may be forthcoming?
We hope so, yes, yeah.
Oh, right. Very interesting. Okay, so the next talk then, again, coming up is
on
when?
The 13th of May. It's between 6:30 and 7:30. It's free, and you get a cup of tea. And Mark's very interesting. He's just full of so much knowledge, and if you're interested in looking at the archives in a different way and looking at art, then please do come along.
Brilliant. Well, Vicci, and of course for anybody not too sure, the archives are kept. Your office is on, is it Bow Lane?
We're on Bow Lane. You can't miss us. We're a lovely, gorgeous example of 1970s architecture, and
that's right.
It's a building on stilts, so
that's the one, isn't
quite
it?
Quite unique.
Yeah. Vicci, thank you for coming in again this morning. It's been lovely to meet you once again. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thanks for listening. We hope you've enjoyed the interviews as much as we have. Why not give us a tweet at ChatCityBFM?